September 1991. The Soviet Union was on the brink of total collapse. Just weeks earlier, hardline communists had attempted a military coup in Moscow. There were tanks in the streets and barricades outside the parliament. But the coup failed. The youth of Russia had tasted freedom, and the Iron Curtain was finally cracking. To celebrate this unprecedented victory for democracy, the Russian government and Western promoters agreed to do something that would have been a crime just a decade earlier. They decided to throw a massive, free Western rock festival right in the heart of Moscow. They called it the Monsters of Rock, and they were bringing the heaviest bands on the planet. The venue wasn't a stadium, it was Tushino Airfield, a massive military base. And because the concert was completely free, the organizers had no idea how many people were going to show up. The youth of Russia had been trading bootleg cassettes of Western metal bands on the black market for years, risking arrest just to listen to distorted guitars. Now, those bands were playing in their backyard. On the morning of September 28th, a sea of humanity began to march toward the airfield. They just kept coming. 500,000, then 1 million. By the time the music started, an estimated 1.6 million people were standing in the mud. It was, and remains, one of the largest crowds in human history. But the Russian authorities were terrified. They had never seen a crowd like this, let alone a crowd fueled by heavy metal. To keep order, they deployed 11,000 heavily armed soldiers, police officers, and special forces. The atmosphere was incredibly tense. You had 1.6 million kids who wanted to cut loose, surrounded by thousands of soldiers holding batons and riot shields. To make matters even more intimidating, the military flew attack helicopters just 30 feet above the crowd, the massive rotors kicking up dirt and drowning out the noise. It looked less like a concert and more like the opening scene of a war movie. The band tasked with lighting the fuse was a relatively unknown groove metal outfit from Texas, Pantera. They had just released Cowboys from Hell, and they hit the Moscow stage like a runaway freight train. When they launched into the song Domination, the sheer aggression and groove of the music hit the Soviet crowd like a physical shockwave. The mosh pits that opened up were the size of football fields. Phil Anselmo screamed into the microphone, and Dimebag Darrell delivered a guitar solo that effectively introduced extreme groove metal to the Eastern Bloc. Pantera didn't just play a set, they conquered a continent in 45 minutes. As the day went on, the tension between the guards and the fans hit a breaking point. The crowd was surging, and the soldiers started using their batons to push them back. Blood was drawn. It looked like a full-scale riot was about to explode. But then, a miracle happened. The soldiers, most of whom were the exact same age as the kids in the crowd, realized they were fighting the wrong war. The music was too powerful. One by one, the soldiers lowered their shields. They took off their military hats. They unbuttoned their uniforms, and they started headbanging. The authorities who were sent to police the concert were suddenly throwing up the devil horns and moshing with the fans. The music had officially defeated the military. By the time Metallica took the stage, the sun was setting, and the energy was electric. They had released the Black Album just 1 month prior, making them the undisputed kings of the genre. When James Hetfield struck the opening riff of Enter Sandman, the roar of 1.6 million people was deafening. Looking out from the stage, the band saw an endless ocean of people stretching all the way to the horizon. When they played Creeping Death, the crowd chanted, "Die! Die! Die!" with such ferocity that it felt like an exorcism of the entire Soviet regime. Metallica delivered a flawless, God-tier performance that proved heavy metal was the universal language of rebellion. To close out this historic day, AC/DC brought out the heavy artillery. Literally, they fired massive prop cannons into the Moscow night sky during "For Those About to Rock, We Salute You." Angus Young duck-walked across the stage in his schoolboy uniform, delivering pure, unadulterated rock and roll to a country that had been starved of it for decades. The 1.6 million fans were exhausted, bruised, and covered in mud, but they were free. For that one day, Tushino Airfield was the capital of the free world, and AC/DC were the commanding officers. Just 3 months after the Monsters of Rock concert, the Soviet Union officially dissolved. The Cold War was over. While politicians signed the treaties, the cultural war had already been won on September 28, 1991. Heavy metal didn't just provide a soundtrack for a concert, it provided the soundtrack for a revolution. It proved that you can build walls, you can ban records, and you can deploy armies, but you can never, ever stop a power chord. The Moscow '91 concert wasn't just a triumph for Metallica, Pantera, or AC/DC. It was the ultimate victory for music itself. For more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world, subscribe and join us for the next chapter.